On this episode, again, I use the word conspiracy loosely, but a big hoopla that NASA was actually using filters on the photos of Mars for a really long time.
And the fact that NASA, right, uses what I guess I'll just use a broad term, they Photoshop it, right?
I think the idea of the reddish hue largely comes from the dust. Where are the people? Where is the civilization? Are the aliens? Where are the Martians?
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
It's 1976. The Viking 1 orbiter launched by NASA is gliding 1,500 miles above the surface of Mars. The transmission is routine until it isn't. In frame 35A72, something unnatural stares back from the Sidonia region, a colossal human-like face, sculpted in stone, casting long shadows across the surface of Mars. At first, scientists dismiss it as a trick of light and a shadow, but others aren't so quick to look away. The image leaks, whispers begin to swirl. Was this monument built by intelligent life? NASA releases statements, later images, different lighting, different angles. They say it's just a mesa, just a hill, but the question lingers. If we really did find a face on Mars, would they even tell us? Because what if everything we've been told was a lie? Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you're tuning in across the nation or around the world. My name is Shane Skwarek, and I am joined by my curator of curiosities. Say his name and he appears, Mr. Philipps!
Whoa, that was a big one.
And we are fired up as
That
your
was a big one.
conspiracy realists, back with another great episode of your favorite sip-inspired conspiracy conversation. Mr. Phillips, do you know that I'm here and ready to rock and roll?
It sounds like you are RTR.
I got to tell you, my voice is probably going to be killing me from that for the remainder of this episode. I don't usually get that kind of pitch. I probably fucked our sound up the whole time, the whole way through, or fudged it up. But it was well worth it. It was well worth it. Tonight, ooh, wow, that was a stiff one. Woo, chills. Tonight, we're talking Mars, and we've touched on a lot of different astronomy topics before, most notably the moon. We've kind of been back and forth with the moon, no pun intended. But this is sort of branching out, if you will, for us. Something that I think we're both fairly interested in. I mean, I feel like I've asked you this every episode. We talked about space, but this is a subject matter you're on, right?
Yeah, dude, I like anything regarding space and going to different planets and aliens and all that shit, so this is right up my alley, my friend.
Yeah. And, you know, it's something that I think, or a subject matter, I think we sort of danced around for a little while because we went into the moon. We really dove around quite a bit from the moon landing to the hollow moon theory. And just we like to kind of mix things up periodically and not kind of stay on the same trajectory. But for whatever reason, it kind of came across our orbit again and just thought it might be a fun one to kind of toss out to you guys. So we're going to set the stage. There's a couple different topics that I think we're going to hit on. We're going to try to keep these a little more narrow focused for this particular one. But as you know, if you've listened to, honestly, even one episode of this, we tend to drift off and hit on 500 different topics. So
Yeah.
we'll do our best.
We'll see what happens.
Apologize in advance. So let's take us back to July 25th, 1976. NASA launches a Viking 1 orbiter and is conducting a photographic survey of the Martian surface. It's orbiting the planet just over every 24 hours. 24.6 is the number that they've got written down here. Snapping pictures and beaming them back to Earth for analysis. But one frame designated 35A72, 35A72, I don't know how they actually verbalize it, captures a strange formation in the region called Sidonia on Mars. Looks like a face. And this is the famous photo that everyone's seen, and we'll pull it up here for you all to look at in a little bit, that you've always seen of that Martian face. Of course, NASA immediately writes it off, and the press release says, and I quote, "It appears to be a natural formation." Of course, because why wouldn't they? Internally, though, within NASA, it gets a little weirder. According to the image enhancement team at NASA, they ran the photo itself through multiple filters, and it still looked like a face. Symmetrical, eye sockets, nostrils, a mouth, even a headdress-like ridge. Independent researchers by the names of Vincent DiPietro, maybe that first sip was a little too strong, and Greg Molinaire, both are computer imaging specialists working near NASA Goddard, took these raw Viking images and ran it through their own enhancement system. And the results, Mr. Phillips, they confirmed bilateral symmetry and found that the face was aligned to cardinal directions. This wasn't just a coincidence that they claimed, it was deliberate. They end up writing a paper, Unusual Martian Surface Features, and that circulates through the UFO and fringe science communities, gaining traction. Along comes a man by the name of Richard Hoagland, who took things a little further, suggesting that the face was part of an entire city, a complex in Sidonia. Digest that for a second. I'm going to go ahead and pull up an image of this notorious face. I've got a feeling that most people have seen this. I don't know how recent that was or what they can really expect from that. So there's a lot going on here. I'm going to try. Does this get bigger for you? I think it does, right?
Let's see. Yeah, it's larger. We're good.
Okay, good. So we got a full screen here. This is the actual image that we're talking about here, Mr. Phillips, 35A72. And I gave you all, our listeners out there, a little bit of background on it. If you are not watching this episode, this is going to be a little bit difficult here. We'll try to do our best to describe it, but I think what we described already is probably going to be the maximum of that. Do check it out on YouTube or Spotify. Yeah, it's a face. So this is the actual image that pops up, and this is that Sidonia region. At first glance, do you see what we're talking about?
So it's funny. I'm trying to find it right now, and I'm very, very familiar with the image. But when you look at this frame, okay, there it is. I just grabbed it. It's one of many structures, whether it be natural or unnatural, that are within this Sidonia region here.
And I had the same issue, and I'm actually glad that I found this particular website. It's viewer.mars.asu.edu, because it's a really high resolution image. Most of the images that I came across when I was looking for this were, just these small, super tiny, like distorted images that I couldn't see shit. I'm looking at it, I'm like, how the hell does anybody see anything, let alone making it out as a face? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So here's a snippet of that image. Once you find it, it's hard to not see it anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to zoom in a little bit here. And so as you get closer, there's a lot of unique formations, like you were alluding to, Mr. Phillips. Like these look like very hard edges.
I was going to say they look like right angles and things that just don't naturally occur.
Right. Isn't that interesting? So here is what they say is the Mars face right there.
There's our face.
There's our face right there. That's pretty well zoomed in. Obviously, a little bit blurry.
Do you know if this image is the original 1976 image?
As far as I can tell, yes. I don't know why it wouldn't be. It might be upscaled. Yeah. Viking was operated at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This video was onto the map.
The reason why I asked that is because it looks so high res when you compare it to other photos of just the face, but it's probably because photos of just the face are so zoomed in that it's really decreasing the quality. And
as soon as we zoom in, look what you're looking at right now.
Yeah,
right?
That's barely discernible.
It's barely discernible. Yeah, perfect verbalization with that. Jeez, look at this guy with the new words. I don't know for sure. I can't say that for sure. My inclination is yes, just the way it's kind of cropped here. And I think that after these images became public, you started to be able to get access to some of the raw files. And so ASU.edu, what is that, like Arizona State? ASU,
sounds good to me.
Assuming that. School of Earth and Space Exploration. I'm going to assume that. Let me see. Let me open that up real quick. Another break.
I thought that school was just for partying. I don't know people actually learn stuff there.
Well, look at that. When you're not sipping back CNCs, you're looking at this stuff. a lot of things to unpack here when we look at the face itself. And I don't want to kind of dive too deep into some of it, but what immediately jumps out at you as, why does this become a concern to the public? What draws the interest here?
Well, look, I mean, if there is a face sculpted on Mars, then clearly Martians are a thing, right?
How did it get there?
How did it get there?
Right. And that's sort of what I think is the catalyst now for this to start getting publicized out there. Like most things we've dealt with in not just NASA, honestly, but the government, is you start to ask questions as to, well, what's the official response? Initially, it's just a bunch of rock formations. And I don't know that that's entirely impossible. When you scan out, like look at the area, right? I mean, there are a bunch of rock formation, and it does kind of look like it's just thrown out there in the middle. Does it not?
Yeah, I mean, it looks... It's... What's odd about it, right, is that if it was... Let's just say that we're looking at some ancient Martian civilization. It is weird that one sculpture, right, is just kind of, to your point, tossed out randomly and not near some of the other structures, but...
Right.
I mean... Who knows?
The interesting thing, too, at least that jumps out at me initially when looking at this image, is as you zoom out a little bit and you look at some of the other formations in the area. I mean, some of these look natural. Like this doesn't.
Right.
I don't know. Can you see my cursor here?
I can see your cursor. Yeah. Exactly.
So like I'm assuming like this isn't something that was grown. I mean, it is somewhat circular, which is odd typically in nature, but like this just looks like sort of a little blob that doesn't really jump out at me. But then when you start to scroll down, I mean, this looks like a straight edge, which strikes me as interesting. This looks like it's a straight edge down here. Strikes me as interesting.
They look like pyramids.
They, I was going to say the same thing. They do look like pyramids. So does like this structure right down here. It looks like the remnants of a pyramid. You start to look at a lot of those things in comparison, and then look at what this giant face is right here. And I don't know, just the coincidences seem a little off. The shadowing too is something interesting to me, because the shadows are all kind of teetering off from our perspective off to the right. That all looks consistent across the image right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree.
So this edge seems like it'd be an odd spot for this to be completely shadowed if there wasn't a hard edge right there. Like it wouldn't be a hard formation, right? And then the same thing would go into here, is if this wasn't elevated above sort of what like the brow ridge would be. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would this be dark right here, right? It would just seem like an odd set of formations on Mars. So there's this guy, Richard Hoagland, and you hear his name a lot when we talk about some of these conspiracy theories, particularly as it relates to Mars. He ends up playing sort of a central role, escalating this whole theory from fringe curiosity to this full-blown claim of ancient, basically alien civilizations. Hoagland talks that it's a part of this entire artificial complex in the Sidonia region, introducing the idea that, the D&M period, the fort, the collection of mounds, kind of exactly what we're talking about as we zoom out here, that they're forming sort of a geometrically significant layout. According to him, the angles and placement of these structures align with the principles of sacred geometry and tetrahedral mathematics, suggesting they were intentionally designed rather than natural formations. In 1987, he even releases a book, The Monuments of Mars, City on the Edge of Forever, declaring that this whole region is the remnants of a Martian civilization. Founded the Enterprise mission, which was a website which I was trying to access direly, and that was some of the links that I had sent you earlier that are just not working at all. That the website's down. It looks like it's there, but something isn't happening on the back end, like something with a security certificate, and so you can't get access to it, which I was pissed because I really thought that we'd get a lot of good information off that in preparation for this episode. And he ended up guest starring on Coast to Coast a dozen of times. Obviously, that pumps this whole thing in the spotlight. Our buddy Art Bell sort of serves as the catalyst for here. Sidonia, I'm going to see if I can pull up a map here of the Sidonia map, or the Sidonia region here. So there's not much else said about the Sidonia outside of Richard Hoagland. He sort of takes it and runs with it. There's a whole bunch of, a lot of people come up with their own versions of this map here. So I'm just going to swap my screen share real quick to a different window. And we're just going to dive right into the Google machine here to see some of these other aspects here, Mr. Phillips. So you can see in some of these images here, I'm going to try to pull this guy up and share this one if it decides to load here. Doesn't seem like it wants to load. Let's try this one. All right. So this is effectively what Richard Hoagland is saying is this Sidonia region. Just the way it's constructed, the way it's laid out, that it's some sort of
I don't think we
conflict.
can see what you're looking at right now.
Oh, you're not seeing this?
No, I still see Google Photos with a lot of images up.
Oh, well, okay. Well, if you're looking at this image right here, on the that are pulled up on Google Images, see the box image right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason it's not jumping my tabs. Let me try it if I did this. Oh, not jumping the tabs. Riverside doesn't want to work for me today. So you see the Sidonia image right there.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of becomes the box image for what we're looking at as it pertains to what our buddy Richard Hoagland is saying. I'm going to pull that off right there. I don't see a whole lot from that. And so when I go back to this initial screen,
I'm just going to say that frame to me is much more compelling than anything else.
Right. And that seems to be the most striking aspect of it. When you look at that, again, I wish I can jump around this a little bit more without losing everything, but that seems to me like there's some organizational structure within there, right?
Yeah. For me, what really gets me are those angles that and granted, I'm half talking out my ass. I'm not a geologist, but to the best of my knowledge and all my years of watching the Discovery Channel, I don't think that those angles occur in nature naturally.
I don't think so either. I mean, I guess scientists would argue that. I think that hard angles, I think, have been proven. I think that's like a scientific fact that there is no straight edge in nature, and there's no circular motion in nature either. I mean, this circle looks like it's probably some sort of a crater impact.
Right, that looks like a crater to me.
Right. So something could have happened there. And if you go back to that theory of Mars, that there was an ancient civilization, there's theories about it being wiped out by nuclear war, it certainly adds to that. I guess my question would then be, why the face, right? Like, this doesn't look like a human. I mean, what does that look like to you?
I admit it almost looks like an alien. It looks like a kind of like a gray, right? Like it looks like an alien.
Okay. I was gonna say it kind of looks like a stormtrooper or something out of Star Wars.
Oh, I can see that too. Yeah.
Right. Like it's just that weird kind of face. I mean, I've definitely seen this in like a sci-fi movie.
It's almost like something you would see of like the Nazca lines in Peru, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating, man. Almost like reptilian too, in a way.
Yeah. It's definitely very odd.
So, questions kind of become at that point, do these alignments seem cherry-picked? I'm going to pose that to you.
Meaning, are we just seeing what we want to see?
Right. I mean, Richard Hoagland goes on to create this whole layout grid of the Sidonia complex. And for some reason, I can't pull up a good map of it.
Yeah.
But, do we think that we're cherry-picking these?
Look, there's a good possibility. If somebody has a theory and they want to prove something, they're going to find every bit of evidence they possibly can to prove their case, and a lot of people will ignore the shit that debunks their case, unfortunately. So, look, that very well could be the case. There's a 99% chance that all of this is natural, but it's certainly fun and interesting.
So you're going to say 99% you think this is natural?
Look, it probably is. It probably is, but it would be cool as shit if it wasn't.
Interesting. Here's the best I could find against like the Sidonia map where he's naming everything out. So you've got this spiral structure down here, spiral mound. Here's that 5-sided pyramid that we were talking about. This in the upper left-hand corner is what they're calling the city, just the way it's all kind of clumped together. Obviously the face, I don't know what the bastion's supposed to be. Some sort of a remnants of a wall right here. Maybe that was once surrounding the city, and a crater, most likely, again, if we were talking about some sort of an alignment right there.
Yeah.
When you think about structures on Earth and the parallels that exist from the moon to Earth, that's where I think things get a little bit interesting with what you're seeing on Mars, because we have the pyramids, we have the Sphinx, we have Stonehenge, we have all of these ancient megaliths or monoliths, I guess, that we can't explain how they were built. And then when you see something like this five-sided pyramid pop up on another planet, and we already are going into this, Mr. Phillips, with the, I don't want to say expectation, but with the theory that this could potentially be from an alien civilization that came and helped us here. I mean, does that sway your thought a little bit on what this can actually be?
Well, you know what's funny? You mentioned the pyramids, and to me, when we look at some of those frames, it looks similar to ancient Egypt, right?
It does.
Like I look at that and I'm like, man, like if I didn't know any better, I think I'd be looking at Egypt right now. Like that's how similar it is to me. And so, hey, look, there's a lot of mystery and lore behind the Egyptian civilization. We've covered it extensively on here. It's one of our favorite topics. So, I mean, if that wound up being the case, if I found out that to be true tomorrow, I wouldn't be totally shocked. No, not at all.
It's funny too, because the way Mars is actually the typography of the land, it's a barren wasteland right now. It's a desert, right?
Right.
And so when you say ancient Egypt, and you look at like some of the structures that are there compared to Egypt, I mean, it's literally sitting in the middle of nowhere, like Egypt is sitting in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And so the concept that these things could have been placed there and maybe a civilization is wiped out, I think it's certainly not lost in that regard, because we've seen it happen right here on Earth.
Yeah.
So
especially that big giant crater that's off to the right. So what happens if you did have a city complex and you had these, monolithic structures that you built, and then all of a sudden a pyramid impacts, which we clearly see evidence of, that could have very easily just literally wiped everything out.
Wiped everyone out in an instant. We hear that all the time. That's an ongoing threat on Earth, is that if we were to have an asteroid come down here and smack against the side of this planet, what happens to there? So the next question comes down to NASA. You start to get this wave, this groundswell of people. I think initially they really ignored Richard Hoagland, and as he connects with Art Bell and jumps on Coast to Coast, I think this is really an era too, where people sort of dismissed the power of these small niche communities, and the conspiracy community at that is, I don't think people quite realized the impact that Coast to Coast started to have on a lot of these stories. I mean, you've heard the wildest ones throughout here. I mean, the John Teeter story, Mel's Hole, like all of these stories have kind of got a groundswell because of Coast to Coast, because of the reach it had. Hoagland was no different. And so when he puts this story out there about the Sidonia region and starts bringing the face out to the public light and has the book come out, all of a sudden a lot more people start asking questions. And I think it shocks a lot of people too, like the types of people that ends up listening to the show. NASA doesn't do a whole lot in that particular era, but as the internet becomes more prevalent and people start asking more questions, and I think distrust in the government starts to sow a deeper seed within our pop culture, NASA's got no choice, because the questions are coming up again. Later in 98, they send the Mars Global Surveyor to revisit the Sidonia region. To this point, all of our imaging of Mars, nobody ever went back there. They never went back to take another picture. They never went back to look at it again to say, this is just a different angle. Nothing ever happened. It was just completely being dismissed. Finally, they decided to do this now on April 5th, 1998, which is 10th birthday of Rusty Justy. Yeah, 10th? Yeah, 88, yep.
DJ Rusty Dusty.
DJ Rusty Justy. They end up capturing a whole new high-resolution image of the face, and gone are the stark eye sockets, the chisel mouth, and the places: a rounded hill, jagged terrain, no symmetry, no monument. They triumphantly go declare, "Mystery solved. This is just a rocky mess." I mean, there you go. There you go, Mr. Phillips. Like, close the book on the discussion.
I mean, and I'm sure you're going to pull it up. And if not, I hope that you do, some of those photos from 1998, but they couldn't be more different from what we saw in 1976.
Okay, do you have those? Because I was having trouble getting them.
I'm sure I could pull it up. Let's see.
Okay, you work on getting that here. 1998 Mars face NASA. I'm just going to type into Google here.
Yeah, I've got one here. Let's see.
Okay, I think this is it. This image. I've got it. All right, open a new tab. Let's get this guy right here. It's going to have some book title on here. So, of course, well, let me just pull this thing up for us real quick. This is what they show.
Yep.
This is the new face, the exact same spot as this.
Yeah, that's it. Now the shadowing looks a little bit different in the photo that you pulled up from what I've seen, but it's essentially the exact. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
There we go. Well, apparently they took multiple photos.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Now,
there you go again.
I mean, granted, we're talking about a 20-year, 2 decades, right, later, so obviously there's been advancements in technology and photography. So, you're going to have a much more clear image. And I guess when I'm looking at that, could I see a ridge on the top, like, left-hand side, where a shadow could have been cast that made it look like an eye, and also on the right-hand side? Yep, I could see that, but it is, it's pretty different. It's pretty different from the 1976 photo.
It's pretty different.
In fact, if I had just seen the 1998 photo, I probably would never put 2 and 2 together and say, oh, yeah, that looks like a face.
Right.
Because it really doesn't.
Right. It's pretty different, and I think most notably is look at the shape.
Yeah.
The shape looks pretty dramatically different to me.
Yeah.
The mounds look pretty dramatically different to me, and I realize, again, there is a 20-year span between here. But presumably there's not been anybody on Mars for millennia. And so the idea that this would have washed off seems odd to me. I just don't know.
Yeah, you know what's weird too? If you look at the 76 photos, above the face, where I guess people alluded to it, you know, calling it a headdress, if you will, you see those kind of, well, I mean, you can't see my cursor, but there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 above the left eye, or I guess it would be the right eye if it was vice versa.
Okay.
Like, that's completely gone. I don't see those anywhere in the 1988 photos.
Right.
So, like, what happened to those things, whatever they are?
The dots you're talking about?
Yeah, those dots, right? Those are just gone.
I think those could just be like artifacts too of the photo, because when I go to like this photo, I don't see the artifacts as much. When you zoom in, you see them on the photo. So that I'm not holding as much.
Maybe
weight.
that's it. Yeah.
I'm looking at the comparison, because like there's other photos where that's a little bit more apparent in other areas. I'm gonna open up another image here that I came across. I think that's just artifacts of the actual photo itself.
It could be. Yeah.
But like the typography otherwise just seems very off. It just seems very different.
It is very different. And again, I don't know if it's just that it's such a low resolution photo and
right.
You know what I mean? That we just can't make out the details of it. It very well could be, but it looks really, really different.
It certainly does. And the interesting thing was, so when this Mars Global Surveyor goes up there, it's not like NASA gets these photos and releases them right away. They're sitting on them for quite a bit of time. And so Richard Hoagland now comes back out and accuses NASA for using lighting and angles to deliberately obscure the features. The sun was the photo was apparently taken when the sun was directly overhead, midday lighting, flattening shadows, reducing the contrast, which I guess is plausible right there. Compare that to the original Viking image, which is captured during early morning sun that casted those long dramatic shadows that helped define the facial features. But again, I don't know if that necessarily helps or dissolves that case quite a bit. Sitting on it for a while, though, that's what kind of gets me curious here. And in looking at the photos side by side, now whether you look at that photo or any of the ones we pulled up, I mean, they all kind of look the same. The 1998 photo, to me, it just seems washed. Does that make sense? Because like, even though it was 20 years later, it's not like when NASA went back up there, they used a higher resolution camera. They had the best of the best of equipment in 1998 at that particular time. And this is an ongoing theme you're going to end up seeing with a lot of space flight. They don't send out the newest equipment. They send out the same shit they had before and boot it out there. So when you say that, 20 years later, technology's improved, that's true, but they weren't utilizing the Canis Rebel EOS R8 camera on the side of the thing. They were still using the same old shit equipment. Might be moderately newer, moderately more improved. That happens with the moon stuff. That happens with Mars. That happens all the time when they're sending stuff up there. It's never the most recent stuff. Granted, the stuff they have is better what you're getting on consumer market, but it's still not the best of the best.
So are we alleging that it was the same technology that they used to capture those photos in 76?
I think so. I can't say that without a shadow of a doubt, but I remember either hearing it or reading it somewhere.
I wonder why it wasn't
the exact same.
Yeah. I wonder why it would be so dramatically more clear then.
Do you think it's more clear?
Well, if it's not doctored, then
I mean,
yes.
If you look at that photo and then you compare it, I'm not sharing it right now on my screen, but if you look at that other photo and then look at our original map, I mean, does it look that different? And is it more clear? Or does it appear more clear because it's higher in focus?
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting, and it's when because I'm actually looking at the photo again right now, and I kind of feel like it's weird because the photo looks like it's better quality, yet I kind of see less detail, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Maybe less detail is not the
detail.
correct word, because it's look, the one from 76, it's kind of really tough to see. Really all you do see is the face, right?
Yep.
You know, in the 98 photos, you can make out a bit more of a terrain, if you will, but it doesn't, just something about it doesn't seem natural to me. You know what I mean?
Well, you're not the only one. And there ends up coming a woman named Donna Hare, who is a former NASA contractor who claims she personally witnessed photographs being airbrushed to remove some of the unexplained objects. And that is not just from this mission, but talking about UFOs, anomalies, so forth, before these photos are sent to the public, which explains the gap. In interviews, she says there was actually a quarantine area where these images were reviewed and edited. There's also Dr. John Brandenburg, who is a plasma physicist who worked on NASA projects, who published a bombshell theory saying the isotopic ratios of the xenon-129 in the Martian atmosphere suggest a nuclear explosion, a massive one. And where is it most concentrated? The Sidonia region, the exact region we're talking about right here. And he believes that Mars was home to a thriving civilization that was wiped out by unknown forces, possibly another alien race. He has a book out there as well, Death on Mars, dives deep into this and potentially a planetary genocide. There's also Ingo Swann, and we're not going to dive too much into this one right here, but CIA's top remote viewer, Project Stargate, he's apparently remote viewed Mars from millennia ago, before the face was even widely known. And this is before this has come out. This is when Ingo Swann was there. And so you saw structures and domes and the surface of Mars during his remote viewing sessions.
And Ingo Swann was the real fucking deal, man. Like, if you do your research on that guy, like that's no joke. He's not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. That man could remote view. He's fascinating.
Remote view, yeah. And I'd love to get into that. If we ever can get another remote viewer on here, that'd be awesome. Or a remote viewer. So I want to touch back on Donna, because she actually had a testimony that was published on YouTube. It's since been taken down. I tried to find it earlier, see if we can maybe play snippets of it. Of course, that wasn't the case. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. If any of you have seen it, please comment it to us. I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, I couldn't find it either when I did research.
Yeah,
but she talks about it from history.
It seems to be erased from history. But she talks a lot about these images being edited. And again, this is not something that's new, especially nowadays. We know for certain that NASA has never taken a picture of the Earth. It's always been parts of the Earth that are stitched together. And when you've seen landscape photos of the moon, of Mars, you can actually see where they photoshopped clouds. They use the same thing. They grab it and they duplicate it across. And it's very evident. I didn't pull up any of those photos here because we really weren't going to dive into too much of that. But do a little bit of research, do some homework out there. The Y-Files actually has an episode on Mars where they show some of those images pulled up right there. AJ's got a whole team that works behind it. It's just me and Tim, guys. So we can't do everything.
And Shane does everything, so.
Tim's the brains behind the operation here.
Yeah.
But so, and this isn't conspiracy in so much as it's common knowledge. I mean, it's openly admitted that NASA has doctored some photos up. There was also a very big... again, I use the word conspiracy loosely, but a big hoopla that NASA was actually using filters on the photos of Mars for a really long time, which gave it a red hue. I didn't realize this until recently. I always thought that was real.
Right. The red planet, right? You
right,
just
the red planet.
Exactly.
It's not the case. And that's why when you look at recent photos of Mars that are coming from the Mars rover, that it doesn't have that like red hue that's just oversetting the land. That doesn't exist. And they were doing that because they wanted to make it seem that it was less habitable, because they didn't want to give the public the false sense of fear, I guess, that it could be sustained for life. Because then the question comes back to, well, this looks just like Earth. Where are the people? Where is the civilization? Or the aliens? Where are the Martians? And so when you start to combine all of these aspects in there, and then you look at that image that we just saw a little while ago, and when you said, Phillips, why does that look so clear? well, I would ask you. I mean, when I looked at that image, it looks like something I can make with like old AI from 5 years ago. When you ask it to do something, what's like a water brush painting, it does not look natural to me. Not to say that the face in Mars is natural either, but it feels like that's a more natural photo. And when I keep looking off camera, guys, it's because I'm
original
looking at the photo. Yes, that looks like it was a photo taken unintentionally missed, because when we zoomed out of that photo, you didn't see what's there. You don't notice it so obviously. Oh, let me screen share again here.
In fact, what stands out to me is the 5-sided pyramid more than anything else. Like that's what's striking to me is the angles of that stands out, not necessarily the face.
I agree with you. Yeah, that's the first thing that my eyes drew to. Like the face is completely hidden for me. And so I don't think it's implausible. Look, you got to remember too, when NASA's taking photos, they're not taking 3 or 4. They're taking like 300,000 photos. They're just running a camera across and snap, 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 right? So this is 035A72. I don't know if the A means something else, but if you just take like the 03572, I mean, maybe that's 3,500 photos right there. Maybe the A stands for another 0 in there, or it's classifying some, I don't know. But you got to imagine there's a lot more than that. So I find that to be, I don't know, something. And tie those factors in with the delay in the release. You just want to shake people off the scent here. It seems interesting, man. It just seems to me like there's something up. That photo was, the photos are too dramatically different.
Yeah.
And it feels like it could have been doctored.
And it's the delay for me is what gets me. Why the delay? Why? It just, exactly, right? It just feels like everything. There's always a delay behind any information that's going to come out. Doesn't matter what fucking topic we're talking about. But if you're not trying to conceal something, then why delay it? They're photos. If they're innocuous, release them.
Just dump
simple
them.
As that.
Why are there analysts, teams of design, photo editors in NASA? Why?
Right. Yeah.
Why not just take your photos and dump them and let the public is doing it anyway. There's already people going through all this shit. Just let them all do it. You have amateur astronomers that are obsessed with this stuff. Those are the people that are discovering the comets and the stars in the sky. It's not like real scientists. It's amateurs that always discover this shit because they're just staring at it. They're obsessed with it. Dump the photos, let everyone else tackle. But they're editing them and they're carefully selecting which ones go up and which ones don't go up. You don't do that unless you're hiding something. Let's step back and let's kind of bring in like the realist aspect of our show. Conspiracy realists, we say we are. We try to do evidence-based with everything we do here. Sometimes it's hard to do that because the evidence just spits so much in the way of the conspiracy. Could it just be a geological formation? And of course, the mainstream answer is yes there. There's a word that I've used on this show before, and I've kind of come to love it because I think it is appropriate in a lot of instances. It's called pareidolia. And if for those that don't know what that word is, it's the tendency of human brains to see patterns in complete randomness, generally like faces or animals. Like I'm sure you've done it, Mr. Phillips. You look at the clouds at your kids, like,
right.
Oh,
I was
there's a
just
dog.
going to say, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's plausible. And I think we do that a lot with a lot of things, right? I mean, how many times have we done that? Yeah.
Like back in the 90s when you had no cell phone and you had to take a shit and like you knew every crack and like paint chip on like your wall in the bathroom and you're like, that one looks like a turtle.
You know what? I mean, I wouldn't have used the take a shit one as an example. I actually thought you were going to say you're looking in the toilet and like, oh, look at this guy. Looks like a sausage. Sure. But yet the staring at the cracks in the wall is the perfect one. Like I can still remember doing that right now. Like I still kind of do it right now. I don't usually use my cell phone because I'm used to like mapping out like a conquest in the cracks of my wall. And then maybe, shit, I should really paint this fucking thing. But then you can't because there's your entertainment gone. I think you nailed it with that. And we see that consistently with everything. There's always people making something where it's not. Sometimes it's with your ears too, and there's a separate word for that. But like sometimes you hear things like you do some music all the time, like you change the lyrics in your mind.
Oh yeah.
And even though you know what the lyrics are, like you can read the lyrics, but you can't hear it anymore because you've convinced yourself that it was real.
Yep. Or in the paranormal, when paranormal researchers record EVPs, right? You know, I always try, and I've talked about this many times. I'm a huge Ghost Hunters fan, and whenever they're doing an EVP, I close my eyes because I don't want to see the words on the screen because I want to hear it for myself. And I could 99.9% of the time, I don't hear what they're saying.
Yeah, me neither.
But then once I read the word, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I can kind of hear that.
I just listened to it was a podcast that was talking about like hidden messages in songs if you play them in reverse. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, I mean, even after they told me what I'm supposed to be hearing, I'm like, I literally don't hear shit. I hear nothing. And then like I'm like forcing myself to like hear it. It's like I think it's the same thing here. And I'm a big fan of the idea of this pareidolia. I'm a big fan of the idea that we like to insert things to fill gaps in our stories. I guess I'd pose the question to you. Do you think that this is mere coincidence? Do you think it's pareidolia? Do you think there's something there? This is separate from me asking you, do you think that's actually a face?
Right.
Do you think that rock formation exists?
Look, I think it's only because we don't have any further evidence. And I guess some might argue, yeah, we do because we have the photos from '98. But because we don't have any more evidence than that, it's really tough to say, you know, with any degree of certainty of, yeah, there really are structures that don't appear to be natural on Mars. It's a very good chance it is just pareidolia. I think it's humans, you know, we want to make sense of nature, of chaos that is all around us, right? We quite literally live in chaos, and we want to make sense of that, and that's probably what's happening here. But having said that, I don't think you could put this issue, for me, I can't put it to bed and say that it's totally not either. And again, for me, more so than the face are those pyramidal looking structures. I'm blown away by those. I mean, not to say that the face isn't, right? I mean, that is certainly a precurious photo. But you know why I think the pyramids blow me away? It's just so similar to what we have here. And but even the face too. I mean, I kind of compare that to the Sphinx. And I'm like, but we have those structures here. So because of that, I can't let it go. There's something in the back of my mind that'll always, you know, gnaw at me about this. So, you know, I think it's entirely plausible.
I think if the face was further away from the pyramids, and I guess on the Mars landscape, it probably is pretty far. The picture is pretty closely, I mean, zoomed out enough where it feels like it's tighter.
Right.
It really is. But I think if it was further away, I'd be less inclined to think that they were correlated. When you talk about the pyramids, only two things can be true to me. One is that they're well, not man-made, but one is that they're created, they're artificially made, they're created, or two is they're naturally forming. There can't be both, right? Because you, again, when you look at from planet to planet, when you look just across Earth, how many pyramids there actually are, you look at that, the likelihood that some of them are naturally occurring and some of them are not, and they're almost identical in all situations, is an impossibility. And I know nothing's impossible. That's an impossibility. So when you look at it on another planet, maybe our understanding of geology is wrong, and maybe these are all naturally occurring. Or maybe it's not. Now, when you look at our pyramids, obviously there's layered bricks and stuff like that. That could be, maybe they're layered on top of a mound that was built like that. Don't know. And maybe that's how it's all coming together. I don't know. I know that sounds like an absurd idea to say that that's naturally forming, but I want that to process with people. If that sounds like an absurd idea, then think about the absurdity of the idea that they just so happen to end up on another planet looking identical and symmetrical.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out there.
To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that any pyramids are formed naturally.
I would tend to agree.
You know, and it's just too dynamic of a structure to occur in nature. I mean, how would that ever possibly occur? I mean, you would need the perfect ratio of erosion, right? Between wind, you know, rain, whatever it might be. It would have to be so perfect. It's got to be 1 in a quadrillion opportunity for a pyramid to naturally occur.
Yeah. Whether the face on Mars is a monument to an ancient civilization or a Martian mirage, Mr. Philipps, one thing is for sure, it's kind of sparked a fire for people getting interested in kind of what's out there in space. It's fueled decades of curiosity, inspired new missions to the Red Planet, and reminded us that we really don't know what's out there. next week on Cocktails and Conspiracies, I'm going to slow down at the end because maybe it won't get to this far on the YouTube algorithm. We're going to dig deeper into the mystery into Project Red Sun, which is an alleged secret U.S. Soviet mission to Mars in the 1970s. Remember that time frame. So remember to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on each and every social media platform out there. You can find them all by visiting conspiracyrealist.com. And until next time, stay curious and stay conspiratorial. Cheers, everyone.